This is going to be literally everything you need to know about sleep and how to get the best night's sleep of your life. So I've been tracking my sleep on my Aura Ring for over 5.5 years now. I've been coaching guys for over 5 years now on how to optimize their nervous system, get the best sleep of their life so that they can fall asleep faster, sleep all the way through, wake up actually feeling rested, recovered, ready for the day, so they don't have to rely on energy drinks and caffeine and stimulants, so they can be more productive, more present, more efficient, get more done at work, so when they come home, they can be present with their kids, they can play with their partner and actually enjoy life rather than feel like everything is just Groundhog Day, dragging themselves from one meeting to the next, and they're always just mentally elsewhere because they can't focus because they're so tired and brain fog ridden all the time. Welcome back to another episode of the Be Better podcast. My name is Harrison Orr. I am a men's health coach and health and performance coach who, like I just said, helps guys nail all that stuff. And in this episode, I want to go through as much as I can about sleep, what I've learned over the last 5+ years, consuming information myself, practicing it on myself, and then utilizing that with clients to help them get the best sleep that they possibly can so they can do all that stuff that I just mentioned. Because if you've been living under a rock, sleep is pretty damn important. It's only been coming out the last couple of years just how important it is, because prior to that, people didn't really understand sleep. They didn't really know, well, I guess we're supposed to do it for a few hours every single night, every single day for our entire life, but they didn't really know why, right? They thought at one point sleep was just to cure sleepiness, which was a very limited way of thinking, but they didn't have any data or information to suggest exactly what it was doing. But now, we have so much data and information and research to be able to say how important it is and just how detrimental it is if you're not getting enough sleep. So just to rattle off a few things, like your chance of getting dementia and Alzheimer's goes up dramatically if you're getting less than 5 or 6 hours a night consistently. If you get less than, again, 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night and you're trying to lose fat, your body will lose that weight if you're in a calorie deficit, but 60% of that weight will come from muscle mass, the stuff you're trying to keep. And also, if you're underslept, then on average, people will eat between 300 and 400 extra calories per day trying to make up for that energy deficiency because of that lack of sleep. Obviously, there's the short-term effects of your tiredness, your brain fog, your lack of energy, like all those kind of things. But they've also found that sleep contributes obviously to our hormones. So for guys, don't get enough sleep, eventually your testosterone will tank and your cortisol will go up. When your testosterone goes low, your sex drive goes low, your confidence goes low, like all your, ability to be a man drops as well. And they've even found for women as well, for every extra hour of sleep you get, your libido goes up by 13%, which you might say like, oh, well, that's not a whole lot. To give you an indicator, the female version of Viagra increases libido by 24%. So you get over 50% increase just by getting an extra hour of sleep. And that's only one leg of the benefits of getting that extra hour of sleep. So get your sleep. So where I want to start with everything about sleep, because sleep is not just getting good night's sleep. Most people think they're like, oh, I should probably maybe do something before bed, in the same way that you pack your lunch before you go to work so you're organized for the day. Like you just do something in that space. But our bodies are so conditioned to routine that it's not just in that moment that we can decide to sleep and just fall asleep. It starts literally the moment that we wake up, because there's these mechanisms within our brain that tell our brain when to be alert, when to be asleep, when to be hungry, when to peak hormones, when to do all these things, that is governed by certain things like sleep, like light, like temperature, like activity levels and things like that, that play into the consistency of our sleep quality, of those hormones and everything else. And so if we're waking up at inconsistent times, it makes it extremely difficult for our body to actually get consistent on those routines. Because it's like if anyone's worked night shifts, I should say, you've gone from nights or days, if you're a nurse or you're doing FIFO work, anything like that, how hard does it make it to regulate your hunger, your sleep, your bodily functions, your patterns, all that kind of stuff. If one week you're working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then the next week you're working from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., like complete switches, it makes it extremely difficult. And so because of all those internal changes that need to take place, it's not as simple as flicking off the light switch if you're trying to get optimal sleep. And so I'm going to start with the start of the day and work our way all the way up to right before bedtime. And then we'll go through some troubleshooting hacks if after all this, you're still, I guess, not getting the best night's sleep, you're still struggling to fall asleep, or you're waking up multiple times throughout the night, or you're just waking up not feeling rested. So, starting in first thing in the morning. When you wake up in the morning, one of the first things that you want to do is not check your phone, is first of all, hydrate. Have yourself 500 mils to a liter of water. Bonus points if you have some lemon or some apple cider vinegar in there. That's amazing for, obviously, for digestion, for your lymphatic system. So like when you start moving first thing in the morning, like because you've been still for so long, all that metabolic waste, that waste in our body has been stagnant. That lymphatic system only drains everything when we move. That's one of the reasons why getting that 10,000 steps is so important. That moving around helps our body to process and excrete all that wastage. And so when you're getting up, there's that big influx of that wastage down to your liver and your kidneys. So having some lemon, some apple cider vinegar can really help to then push that out and obviously help your digestive system, also helps blood sugar levels, all that cool stuff. So after you've done that, you had your water, apple cider vinegar and your lemon. If you've got the capacity, both time in terms of time of the day and also timing in your morning, go sit in the sun. If you can go sit in the sun for 15 to 20 minutes with as much of that sun on your bare skin as possible, again, no sunglasses either. You don't stare directly at the sun. You don't need to stare even in that direction, but just allowing that light onto your retinas, onto your body, signals to your brain, it's morning, it's time to be awake, it's time to be alert, and starts the cascade of all those other reactions, which will later develop into hunger, into peaks in hormones, and then roughly from that time, about 14 to 16 hours later, is when our body will naturally start to get sleepy to prepare us so we can fall asleep, and then 8 hours later, roughly wake up, and that cycle repeats. The more consistent you can be with your wake up time, the easier it will make the rest of your day and your sleep patterns as well. Because our sleep isn't consistent. Like an hour of sleep at the start of the night is not the same as an hour of sleep at the end of the night. And so if you're getting shorter sleep some nights than others, on those nights that you get shorter sleep, you're going to be robbing yourself of what's called REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. And in that state is often when we dream, and that's when our brain goes through this process of clearing out all the waste. And so if you think of it like all the pathways in our brain are kind of like little tubes, like little tunnels. And over the day, they build up waste. They build up these things that stick around. And if that's not cleared out throughout the night, then that's when we wake up. We feel brain foggy, like we're not sharp with our thinking, with remembering things, with, I guess, our wit or our answers. We kind of stumble over our words a little bit. But when you've had a good night's sleep, you've had plenty of REM sleep, and that glymphatic system, is what it's called, has cleared out all that metabolic waste. You've got those nice clean tubes for your brain to send those electrical currents through to tell your brain and mouth what to say, the rest of your body what to do, what to think. You're doing all that kind of stuff at much faster speed. Then you're a lot more productive throughout the day because you've cleaned that out. And so that's why having consistent wake times as well as sleep times allows your body to have optimal chances of getting enough REM sleep, getting enough deep sleep. Because at the start of the night, we might only get 7 to 10 minutes of REM sleep in our first 90-minute cycle. We then come up to a light stage of sleep, then go down to a deep sleep. Then the next cycle, we might get 10 to 15 minutes of REM sleep. And then that builds up by the 5th or 6th cycle of sleep, we're getting a lot more of that REM sleep. And so if you're getting shorter sleep, that's what you're robbing yourself of. That's why we want to stay nice and consistent with the hours that we sleep. Anyway, moving on, after that morning routine. So we've got some sun. Next, you want to get some movement in place. You don't have to go and smash a hectic workout. If that's your thing and that's how you like to start the day, by all means, go ahead. But at a very minimum, you want to go and get some steps in. Get some steps in, do some mobility, do some yoga, go for a walk, go for a run, ride, or go train weights, like go get your movement in. That movement, that blood flow, that increase in heart rate, that increase in temperature is again going to signify that alertness, that time for the day, that we're peaking up, we're getting ready for the day. And that's also going to, that expenditure of energy is also going to contribute to the production of energy. You hear people say like, oh, I work out, I'm expending more energy, but I've got more energy. Because your body recognizes that, hey, we're burning more of this, we're using more of it, so let's make more. Naturally, if you sit on the couch all day and don't do anything, after days and days and days of doing that, your body's going to recognize, well, I'm not going to make you more energy because you're clearly not doing anything with it. So there's no need for it. But you start to move a lot more, you start to train a lot more, you do this, then your body's like, cool, we're going to need this, so let's keep making it. So go out, get yourself some movement. Then, coming back, if you're eating on a regular cadence, then you'd have your first meal. Right? Ideally, keeping it to proteins and fats. Unless you've just trained, then you might want to introduce some carbs in there, but generally most people do best with just fats and proteins in the morning. Then you go about the rest of your day. Now is when the time, if you want to caffeinate, you can caffeinate. I suggest to people to make sure that for their caffeine intake, you want to limit that to the morning portion. So ideally, allow your body to wake up naturally. So give it 45 or at least 60 minutes roughly before you have that first cup of coffee to allow your brain to clear out all that adenosine. That's the stuff that makes you feel real sleepy, especially if you've woken up in a deep state of sleep. You're going to feel real sleepy and a little bit groggy. That's not always a marker of having poor sleep, but it just means that you may have woken up in a deeper state of sleep. So give yourself, again, 60, 90 minutes, and if that clears away, cool. That's what's happened. You've just woken up in a deeper state of sleep. It's taken a little bit longer to clear that out. Or if that lasts for most of the morning later on into the day, then it's a sign that you haven't got adequate sleep quality. And so then once we move on after that movement, we've had our breakfast and we're now caffeinated. Again, keep in mind that coffee has a half-life of 8 to 10 hours. So if you have a cup of coffee that contains, for example, for ease of maths, I know it's a little bit less than this, but for ease of maths, let's say that it contains 200 milligrams of caffeine. You have that at even 10 o'clock. By 6 o'clock at night, so dinner time for most people, you've still got 100 milligrams of that caffeine roaming around your brain, holding up adenosine receptors and just taking over. And so even at that stage, you might be able to fall asleep just fine. I hear a lot of people say like, oh, I need a cup of coffee. I'll have a cup of coffee after dinner. I need that to fall asleep and it's fine. You might be able to fall asleep, but I can guarantee that if we tracked your sleep, if we hooked you up to electrodes and to measure your sleep, you would not be getting deep sleep. Like, it's biologically impossible unless you have an extremely fast metabolism of caffeine that your body just chews it up like that, which I would less than 0.1% of the population have. Then that adenosine is going to be binding to those. The caffeine is going to be binding to those adenosine receptors, which means when those adenosine receptors are taken up by the caffeine, that adenosine can't get in, it can't bind to the receptors, so you can't go into a deeper state of sleep. So you might be able to fall asleep, but the depth of your sleep may not be to the depth that is required so that you can actually feel rested, so that your body can go through that cleansing system and the rejuvenation that it does when it gets quality sleep. So it might be hard to change those caffeine routines and to hack being tired for a couple of days while you adjust. And believe me, I get it. At one stage, before I learned about all this, before I went into, addressing my sleep and my nervous system, I was having 10 shots of coffee a day. Like, working in cafes, they just say, here. I was drinking more coffee than I was water. I was fried. Like, do not recommend. And so, when you can hack, okay, well, I'm going to be tired. I'm going to have to change this routine, but it's so that I can get more sleep. It's so that I can sleep better, so that I can have more energy, so that I'm not reliant on caffeine to go about my day, to perform, to do all these things. Then in the long run, you'll be much better off. And to be clear, I'm not banishing coffee. Like, I still love a cup of coffee, but we want to be able to enjoy it rather than say I need it, rather than have a dependency on it because I don't have the energy to work out. I don't have the mental capacity to work, to function, to do anything without this coffee, or I need this coffee to feel good. Otherwise, I feel pretty shit. Whatever it might be. I don't know about you, but I don't want anything to have that level of power over me. And so reducing that, be mindful of that timing. So ideally before lunch, depending on your caffeine metabolism rate, dialing it back even further if you need to. And then so going into lunch, if you're feeling really drowsy in that early afternoon, so keep in mind, like I said, we have those peaks and troughs of everything based on when we kind of wake up, right? So about 90 minutes to 2 hours after we wake up is when we hit that first peak of energy, of mental clarity, of everything. And that'll last for an hour to two before we kind of dip off a little bit. And there's a little lull, right? This little lull is usually around that 2 to 3 p.m. mark where most people have that afternoon crash, right? It's supposed to be a lull in energy. Like you peak at lunch and then you come down a little bit. It's supposed to be a lull, not like you're hitting the brick wall. If you feel like you're absolutely hitting a brick wall and you're like, oh my God, I can't think straight, I'm so brain foggy, I'm so tired, I need a nap, all these things, it could be a couple of reasons. One, that sleep is trash. Two, if you've had a lot of caffeine when you first wake up and it has bound to those adenosine receptors, that caffeine has then started to dissipate and free up some of those receptors. All that adenosine that's been built up in that time, all that sleepiness that's been built up, now has access to those receptors, and that's what's making you feel tired. You're like, oh my God. And that's why a lot of people will then lean back into caffeine, have that, oh, I feel so much better. It kicked all the adenosine off those receptors and it's taken over for again, which will again ruin your sleep, ruin you for the next day. It can also be because you've had a big meal. Like a big meal requires a lot of resources for our digestive system to break it down. A lot of blood flow, a lot of work, which has to come from somewhere, which ends up coming from our head, right? That's why, on Christmas Day, Christmas lunch, Easter lunch, things like that, everyone has this big feed, and then by that mid-afternoon, 2 to 3 p.m., everybody's ready for a nap, right? Their body has sent all those resources down to that digestion, and it's like, cool, let's go sleep this off, and then we'll come back later. And so if you've got stuff to do in the afternoon, you can't afford to go and have that siesta every single day, then dial back that meal. So if you're having a huge meal of carbs, that's usually a big culprit. But also, if you're just having a massive meal in general, can be the culprit as well. So if that's the case, maybe limit the size of that meal. If you're in a bulking stage in life, then maybe have more meals, but smaller meals. That can help to avert that as well. And what I get a lot of guys to do is start backfilling their day with their carbs. So we'll start having the bulk of our carbs at night, and then if they need more calories, more carbs, then we'll go to a smaller amount in lunch and then build that up. And so the idea there is like from that dinner meal, then having that big bulk of carbs, that big meal, so that 2 to 3 hours after that, they get that big, heavy, sleepy feeling right before bed, which is what we want, which will help them go into a deeper sleep and sleep through the night. And so after you've passed that midway mark, ideally, if you can, you want to get a little bit more sunshine as well throughout the day. Obviously, you're moving, you're hydrating, still hitting that 10,000 steps, aiming to hit your water intake, which we suggest is about 50 mils per kilo of body weight. So if you're 100 kilos, 5 liters of water per day. Obviously a little bit more if you're working out a lot, if you're a laborer or sweating a hell of a lot, especially in summer, things like that. But that's a general guide for a lot of people. And then getting yourself a little bit more sun. So when it comes to sunlight and sleep and circadian rhythm and all that good stuff, what matters with that sunlight is a few things. Is first of all, the position of the sun, position of the source of light, because the angle that hits our retina will then again give us feedback as to what time of day it is. Like if it's high above, like if the light source or the sun is directly above, extremely bright, exhibiting a lot of blue light, tick, 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 for middle of the day, time to be focused, time to be alert, time to get shit done, time to be active. That unfortunately goes the same for artificial lights as well. And that's why turning those lights off at night when you're trying to wind down can be very helpful, because that positioning is counterintuitive to winding down. But then when the sun starts to lower in the sky, those blue lights are fading to orange, reds, yellows, and it's coming down again, and it's getting dimmer as well. It's fading. More signals, tick, tick, tick. Sun is setting, getting dark, time to wind down, time to start releasing melatonin, time to get sleepy, time to prepare for bed. And so if you can get a bit of afternoon sun to then set that clock in motion, to reaffirm that clock, I should say, can massively be helpful. Then you want to have dinner about 2 to 3 hours before bed. I know that's not always feasible for everyone given kids and work schedules and life, but the earlier that you can have that, the better. Because if we have a big meal very close to bed, like I'm talking 30, 60 minutes before bed, then it takes a while for that food to digest, right? And that normally we're upright. So we have the aid of gravity to push that food down through our digestive system to work it. We're walking as well, which that side to side stepping, that motion also helps to break up that food to digest it and push it through our digestive tract. But then if we're having that big meal, we then go and lie down. We're now horizontal. We don't have the aid of gravity. So our body then has to work even harder to manually push that food through our digestive tract. And then we're not walking either. So it has to work even harder to compensate for that. And so when we're trying to go to sleep, two of the markers that are necessary for us to go into a deep state of sleep are our lowered heart rate and a drop in temperature. But when our body has to process that meal, has to work even harder, our heart has to keep pumping that blood around to provide the energy, to provide the resources needed to make those contractions through our digestive system. So our heart rate stays elevated for longer, sometimes up to 90 minutes to 2.5 hours after we've actually gone to sleep. It's still working. And then also because of that blood flow, because our heart working harder, it's not able to then lower our temperature as well because it keeps us warm, keeps us working. And again, so even though you might go to sleep and even though you might fall asleep, you're not going to be able to get into a deeper sleep until 2 hours later, roughly. And so even if you're in bed for 8 hours, your body's not starting its proper deep cycle of sleep until 2 hours in. So you're really then only getting 4 hours. And so, like we said earlier, when we cut our sleep short, it's the REM state of sleep that we miss out on. So on nights like that, you might get broken sleep. You might only get 10, 20 minutes of REM sleep for the entire night. Because really, by the time your body's finished digesting, slowed its heart rate, lowered its temperature, you've only got 3 cycles of sleep when we want to have around 5. So that's where we miss out on that crucial element of sleep. And so after you've had that meal, you've given yourself time to digest it. Bonus points if you can go for a walk after that. Going for a walk after any meal massively helps the digestive process, massively helps to reduce the blood sugar spike after that meal as well. So they're all very beneficial. And also, again, that's a great time to be then exposed to the setting of the sun, to the darkness, to then reaffirm that. So you can time that with that afternoon period of getting sunlight, getting outdoors. And then at least an hour before bed is when we want to start, earlier if possible, but also start dimming the lights in our house. So what I like to do is turn all the overhead lights off. I use this sea light lamp that's up here, or you can use a rock salt lamp. I use these lights here that I've got here for when I make content because they're much lower, or that I can lower them much more as well. And so we're going for yellows, orange tints again to simulate the sunset. And so naturally, when you're in that darker environment, you feel yourself get sleepy. Keeping screens off at this time as well, so phones, tablets, TVs, because they all emit blue light as well, which is what the sun emits to keep us awake, to keep us alert. So we want to get rid of that blue light because that conflicts the release of the melatonin and tells us not to do that just yet. So we want to reduce that. But also, when we're on those screens, what is it doing? It's keeping us engaged. It's keeping us active. It's trying to keep our attention on that, which they don't want us to sleep. So it's a double-edged sword on staying on screens. So the more that we can get off screens in that last period before bed, have have a bath, have a shower, meditate, read, clean the house, sit there and stretch, do some mobility, talk with your partner, talk with your family. Find something that you can do in that time that enables you to be present, to unwind, to prepare for bed, to just be in that environment. Because naturally, when you're in that environment of like the dim lights, and we'll go into temperature in a second, your body's going to start to prepare. It's going to pick up on the cues. Oh, we're going to bed. We're getting ready for bed. It's darker, it's cooler, bed is coming soon. Awesome. Release melatonin. Let's start to get sleep. Let's start to unwind. We're winding down for the night. The more of those environmental cues that you can have, the easier it makes in preparing for bed, so that by the time you go to bed, you can fall asleep a hell of a lot sooner. Another layer on top of dimming those lights is adding blue light blocking glasses. They're actually phenomenal for blocking out that blue light. And just because you're wearing those doesn't give you a free pass to then stay on screens as much as you like. If you do need to go on screens, highly recommend wearing them. But even if you're not on screens, popping those on can massively help. That'll emphasize and speed up that process of feeling sleepy in that darker environment. And so the next process is, especially for the environment, is dimming that temperature. So like we said, our body needs to drop at least a degree to go into a deeper night's sleep. So cool your bedroom, whether you use a fan, aircon, open the window in winter, enough that you're not freezing, but enough to keep it slightly cooler. What you can also do before bed is have a hot shower or bath. And so yes, you want to have a hot one. So when you step out, your body will naturally cool down. Right, like when we're hot, our body works hard to cool our temperature down. So when you go from your hot bath or shower, you step out, naturally that's going to be a drop in temperature already. Then on top of your body already trying to cool itself down, that will speed up that process in cooling your core temperature down. And then you go from there into bed, and your body's already on that trajectory of cooling down. Then you're already halfway there and getting to sleep. If you want, some people also like to wear socks as well. Socks, and as much as you can be, depending on the season, try to be naked as well. That airflow is going to make it a lot comfier, a lot cooler for your body as well. But that can also help that temperature regulation too. So we've covered the temperature. That last little bit before bed, like we said, find yourself a way to unwind. If you get to this point and you're still feeling like there's so much going on in your mind, like you just can't stop thinking about work, or there's something stressing you out, find yourself a practice to address this up. For some people, it's meditation. Other people, it's journaling. Or some people just don't like the term journaling. If it suits you better, brain dump. Like just writing down all that stuff that's on your mind can be enough to close those loops, right? So that you're not relying on your memory to action these things, which is basically what's happening. Like when you can't get these things out of your head, it's because your brain has recognized that there's no other reason, there's no other source to rely on that this is going to get done. So we're going to keep it here. We're going to make sure that you don't forget. So if you do that brain dump, cool, tomorrow I need to reply to this email, I need to call this person, I need to do this, don't forget to book that, whatever it might be, brain dump that all out so that you're not relying on your memory. If you're someone that wakes up at 1 to 2 in the morning with stuff on their mind, that can be a big reason why, because there's all these open loops. So the more of these that you can close before you go to bed, like the more of these that you can pre-handle, then the easier it makes getting to sleep, staying asleep as well. And if you don't already have one, I highly recommend using a calendar, because using a calendar is, I guess, the easiest way to be organized, because then with those to-do lists, you can put them straight into your calendar based on their, I guess, level of urgency and priority and deadline if they have one, but then also how long it's going to take you as well. So you don't have this to-do list 20 miles long and you've only got 16 hours in a day after you take out 8 for sleep, and then you're like, well, I can't get them all done, and that builds on overwhelm and frustration because you're just never ending. That way you can allocate, well, these 3 tasks are going to take me 2 hours each, and that's pretty much my day around eating, pickups, drop-offs, all that kind of stuff. And so it's a lot easier to stay motivated and to feel like you're making progress if you're a lot more realistic about what you're doing. And then, so we've worked through that. Next, a lot of people ask me, like, what supplements can I take to wind down before sleep? Like, what supplements can I take? And there's a lot of supplements out there. I don't recommend melatonin to anyone. I don't feel like that has a use for a lot of people, especially if you followed everything else like this. You've got a natural production, allow your body to naturally release that melatonin. You don't really need it. What can be helpful? If you're someone who's hyper stressed, you've got a lot on your mind, your nervous system is a little bit fried, and you're doing all this other stuff, but you need something a little bit something else to kind of help you, because we know if you can get better sleep, then you'll have a higher threshold of stress and everything else works better. L-theanine can be amazing. So L-theanine is just a tasteless powder, or you can get it in capsules from, I get it from iherb.com. It's cheap, it's easy. Highly recommend that, especially if you're someone who's highly stressed out. And it's just for your nervous system. So it doesn't directly help you sleep, but it will help you sleep by calming your nervous system, by calming everything down. So you can take that during the day if you're a stress head, before bed, just to calm everything down. In the same line of aid, I guess, would be the Relax blend that I make with Primal Energies. Shameless self-plug here, but that has been hugely beneficial for myself and for other people that have high amounts of stress, anxiety, and sleep issues. I notice whenever I take that, I get a much deeper sleep because of the reishi, the rhodiola, and the chamomile all help to soothe the nervous system. They're all the rhodiola and reishi are both adaptogens, so help our body adapt to and handle stress so that we can calm ourselves, think clearer, feel calmer, and sleep deeper. It can be really helpful. Magnesium is the next supplement as well, which everybody should be taking, especially if you're exercising. Aim for about 500 to 1,000 milligrams a day of either magnesium bisglycinate or L-threonate. L-threonate is more for your brain. It's a little bit more pricey, but bisglycinate is great for just an overall and muscle recovery kind of usage. So taking that before bed as well. And then even glycine and inositol can be really helpful as well, especially if you have trouble staying asleep throughout the night. So if you're someone that wakes up a lot throughout the night, you toss, you turn, you feel very light in your sleep, then utilizing those supplements as well. But if you're someone that is a very light sleeper, also check out your environment. Our environment needs to be dark, like pitch black dark. Like you should not be able to see a freaking thing in that room. But if you can, like if for whatever reason, you just can't get it that dark, or you've got street lights, and even after you've put stickers on all the electrical devices, ideally you just turn them off. But if you've done all that, I highly recommend getting a face mask. I just use a silk one from Amazon, which is like a thick band that goes over my eyes, around my ears, and just has a Velcro strap at the back. That way it's nice and smooth all the way around. There's no clumps, though it's not uncomfy. It also aids as a bit of a noise blocker as well, because it covers my ears, which can be really helpful. So it helps to block out, noise. It's not so much that I can't hear my son cry, but it helps with some of that smaller noises, from either the cats or my wife turning over that otherwise might wake me up. Just helps with that. So if you're someone that gets disturbed really easy, consider things like that, maybe even earplugs as well. Find what works for you, but so that you can just get that deepest sleep possible. And then once you wake up, hopefully by now you feel rested, you feel recovered, and you can go through that process again. So troubleshooting this stuff. If you have trouble getting to sleep, I'd suggest put more of an emphasis on that sleep routine. So find out if you're hyper alert, you're super amped up, have you had caffeine later in the day? Have you had alcohol? Is there something stressful on your mind? Consider addressing those things and prep your environment for that so that you're ready to go to sleep. If you're someone that struggles with that and you've been doing this for a while, don't get into bed until you are sleepy. So don't worry about what time of night it is. At first, only go to bed when you are sleepy, because otherwise it's like sitting at the table and just waiting to get hungry. Your brain forms crazy amounts of associations with things, and if it starts to form the association of being awake while we're in bed, or a bad relationship or a poor relationship with our bedroom or with our bed or with sleep, like it's stressful or it's frustrating, it's an unknown, we don't know how it's going to go, then we need to kind of break that. We want to have that relationship with bed and with sleep that's oh yes, I can't wait to sleep, I can't wait to get into bed, I'm going to sleep so well. When you get into bed, you're either in there to have sex or to go to sleep, one of the two, that's it. Which also means that no scrolling on your phone in bed, stand up, go, leave the room if you want to do that kind of stuff, but bed is strictly for sleep. And so waiting until you are tired to get into sleep. Then if you're trying to go to sleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night and it's been more than roughly 30 minutes and you still can't sleep, get up. Again, just to break that association of being awake and in bed, get up, go to a different room, read or meditate, do some breath work, do maybe some light stretches, or just take that pressure off yourself of trying to force yourself to sleep. You know what? It's awesome. It's dark, it's peace, and it's quiet. I'm just going to relax. I'm not going to try and count sheep. I'm not going to try and check the time. I'm not going to, put pressure on myself like, fuck, I need to get up at 6 o'clock, which means if I fall asleep right now, I've got 4 hours and 32 minutes and 15 seconds left. So I need to fall asleep as soon as possible. Like, no, it's nice. It's quiet. It's peaceful. I'm comfy. I'm just going to relax. That's all I need to do right now. And soon enough, your alarm will go off and you'll wake up. Taking that pressure off and changing that relationship can be massively helpful for a lot of people, especially if you've been struggling with this for a while. And then coming to the end of the night, when you're waking up in the morning, if you're still feeling groggy, like I said, give it 60 to 90 minutes, see how you feel. If that's not the case, you have that feeling all day and you've done all this kind of stuff, you don't really remember waking up, but you still feel shit, you don't feel like you're getting a deep night's sleep. One thing that I'd highly recommend, like the next layer to this, if you want to be even more specific to your sleep and overall health, is getting a tracking device. Like if you're serious about optimizing this and your health in general, get yourself an Oura ring, get yourself a Whoop strap, whatever, one of those devices that you can track your sleep quality, which will give you in-depth data about your REM sleep, about your heart rate variability, about your light sleep, about how long it took you to get to sleep, how often you woke up, like all these different markers. So then when you're making these changes, you can start to see what influences your sleep and how. You can also start to see when you do certain things, what days of the week will have certain influence as well. Like I've been tracking my sleep and my data for 5.5 years now, and I know consistently every single year at August, so like just coming out of winter when I've had less sun, less vitamin D, and like less time outside, my sleep and my biomarkers are at their lowest. And then come into early January, late December, that's when they're at their highest, because I'm spending a lot more time outside, I'm getting a lot more sun, and I'm being a lot more like active outside in nature. And like that's a seasonal thing. I put measures in place to try and correct that, but it's just part of the seasons as well. And so when you can get feedback as to, well, this is how caffeine affects my sleep, this is how this routine or this alcohol or this meal or these lifestyle factors affect my sleep, then you can start to make personalized, informed decisions about what you do and don't do. And it's not about, living a life of like, I'm just going to optimize my health and my sleep, and anything that compromises that, can get fucked. Like I'm not doing it. It's like, no, if you decide to have that glass of wine or alcohol, if you decide to stay up late, if you decide to do that thing, live your life, that's cool. But you know that, okay, my sleep is not going to be the best tonight. Is it worth it? And sometimes it is. And you're like, okay, I'm happy to accept those consequences. But other times, like, oh, I just don't feel like sleeping. I just want to watch this episode of like Suits or whatever on Netflix. And you've got a big day of meetings and business and like whatever else tomorrow. Is it worth it? Maybe not on that case, right? Everyone can make their own decisions, but you've got more information to say that may not be the best decision. But you can make that call because you're now making informed decisions rather than naive decisions. And that's the position I want you guys to be in. So almost 40 minutes, that's a massive brain dump of everything that I know about sleep that I've used for myself and for like hundreds of almost 500 clients now over the past few years. So I hope that is helpful. I know that is a huge amount of information to digest, but I hope you can take at least one thing from this podcast, at least one thing that you can implement today so that you can get a better night's sleep. Because I know when you get a better night's sleep that you feel better, you perform better, you're just a better human being in general. So the more people that we can get sleeping better, the more that we can all be better as a collective. So I hope that's helpful. If it feels aligned with you, drop a comment. Let me know what you took away from this and what you'll implement and how that helps you, because I'd love to hear how you go with that as well. And if you know someone struggling with sleep, then please share this with them so that they can, start to improve their energy, their sleep, all that good stuff. And I hope that's helpful. Again, don't be sorry, be better. You've got the information. Now go take action. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.